going to quickly show you 2 things about education, and then jump to buildings and furniture, and then they'll use up our time. But please track this as I'm going, and we're going to skip around a little bit, but it'll all be in a straight sequence, so we're just going to omit some of the line items. Okay. Good? Pardon me? Oh, you just said we're good. Good. Okay, we're good. Okay, so I showed you this book. And we're buying these, right? How many copies? Cool. Okay. Very quickly, I'm going to outline the framework, right? So, this is what they call the rainbow diagram. This captures the big ideas that are in the book. And the big ideas basically are, yes, we still need to teach core subjects. However, we need to do them with 21st century themes. We have to think about how these core subjects really fit into our world and get them relevant rather than abstract. We also have to teach life and career skills, really focusing on those portable tools that kids need to be successful when they leave here. We need to focus on learning and innovation skills. Learning skills would be, how you study, but innovation skills would be how do you take risks. And I forgot to have you speak to that. Let me finish this and we'll make that statement about the foundation, okay? And if I forget to have you, then we just come on right up here. Okay? All right, so innovation skills. We now, all of a sudden, want our students to be able to innovate. And if they're going to have 9 different jobs, but by the time they get to be 40 and half of those jobs haven't been invented yet, they better be pretty sharp on how they might be able to innovate. Then we need them to learn media skills, information and technology skills, basically everything that has to do with using computers, technology, and what I call new media. All this new stuff that they are growing up on and generally have to leave behind when they come to school. And in order to do these things, we need to adjust all of these things. We need to adjust our standards and our assessments, the way we assess students. We need to change our curriculum. We need to add to it and modify it. We need to have professional development, training for teachers, and we need to shift our learning environments. So, a little more detail on this. Here's a listing of what they think are the core academic areas. So this would be Spanish and reading, world languages, the arts, mathematics, science, geography, history, government, and civics. What I think is really interesting about this listing, and this is right out of their book, is they put the arts right in the middle of the core. We tend to think of arts as something else. Do you? Do you have an art? Yes. Do you have an art teacher here? Yes. Yep. Read. Okay. And do those teachers work with the core teachers in their work? Or do they teach art as a separate curriculum? Yes. Okay. This is saying it's a part of everything else, right? And what Fidel, who wrote the book, another chance to wave the book. What Fidel says is that these are still important, but they're no longer sufficient. We can't rest easy on just teaching these. We've got to do more. And some of the things we have to do more are, we need global awareness, we need more literacies, we need entrepreneurial literacy, we need business literacy, we need economic and financial literacy. Our kids need to know how to negotiate their personal lives. And I was just talking with this gentleman about the 5th grade English program and the students developing business concepts. That's great. However, we need it in 1st grade as well, right? As well as 9th grade and 10th grade, etc. So new literacies. We need civic literacy, of course, and health literacy. We also need to relate them together. So we may get new equations for what the classroom experience is. So global awareness might be taught with geography and languages and history and sociology and art and music all at the same time. And how do we do that?
Integrating.
We do it with integration, but most schools are not set up for integration. Most schools are set up that different teachers teach different subjects and they teach them at different times. So this raises lots of challenges about how you organize your school.
And that's because we need a lot of spaces and time to work together. That's the only way to work together.
And most schools do not have time for teachers to work together except occasionally, like once a month or once every 2 months or something like that. So this is asking for some major shifts. Expanding this, we have definition of lots of different sub-skills. There's all your technology skills. And these have emerged in the dialogue of what's important here. It's probably the most important things that students should be learning. Creativity, critical thinking, communication, and collaboration. I've labored on this already. I'll show you a little bit about this in a second. This we talked about earlier, and getting into deeper thinking, not just knowing things, but solving problems, solving puzzles, getting into the inner workings of issues is what's important. A quick piece on some research here. This is by a guy named Craig Gerald. In a 70-page document that you can get on the internet, just Google defining a 21st education. You get this whole thing. I highlighted this because this is so important. This is his research on what employers say is very important knowledge and skills. And the way you read this is that there's a whole series of curriculum areas here. Humanities, arts, history, geography, government economics, foreign language, science, math, leadership, etc. If it's important, it's on the list in the first place. However, the most important have the longest bars. The shorter ones are important, but not as important. So look at the way these stack up. This is asking leaders of business, industry, what's important for our students. The ones that are the traditional learning areas are the least important for success in the business world. And I would attest, by the way, that this listing, well, I'll tell you in a second. So if these are on there, they're important, but they're not as important as creativity and innovation. And that's not as important as critical thinking, problem solving, oral communications, teamwork, collaboration, professionalism, and work ethic. That's what the business world is wanting. And this is interesting. Oral communications is way down here. Written communications is way up here. And in the United States, I don't know how it is here, in the United States, we spend like 80% of our time, 90% of our time worrying about written communication, and only maybe 10% worrying about oral communication. We don't give first graders chances to regularly speak in public. Do you? No? Well, so it's no different. We don't pay attention to the oral communication part. We don't have debates among students very much. We don't have opportunities for them to make persuasive arguments very often. So we're kind of got it all backwards. A couple of an example here. Here is a way of teaching and for students doing things that wrap a lot of this stuff together. This is an example of an 11th grade French class in a high school just outside of Boston. And what this is project-based learning. This is where students take on a project, and in this case, the project lasts a whole year. It's number 11 on your tracking sheet, by the way. They take on a project, and they work in groups of 3. So 3 students from this French class take on a project to design a cafe in Paris. That's the project. Design a cafe in Paris. Now, you don't teach French here, but you do teach English.
Yes. Yes.
You could have your students take on a project called design a cafe in Boston. Or design a cafe in Chicago, right? You could do that. And you could do it with 11th graders. Let me tell you the scenario. Could you do it with 7th graders? Could you do it with 5th graders? Let me explain what they did. So this is the year-long assignment. Kids working in threes, and they work outside of school, and they check in with their teacher and the other students every 2 weeks. So every other week on a Friday, they report out for their progress on this. And you know, if they didn't do that, they'd all wait until the end of the year, and they try to pull it together, and they would not do very well. But here's what they're responsible for. They are responsible for inventing a restaurant that they're going to locate in a particular building, in a particular street in Paris. Paris has, 19 arrondissements, the zones of Paris that are culturally, that over the years have emerged as being culturally, socially, demographically unique, distinct from each other. So they have to develop a business plan for their restaurant. They have to do a real estate analysis of the city of Paris, because the curriculum goal here is for students to understand the culture of Paris, for them to understand what it's like as a place to live. And so this challenge of designing a restaurant really is the driving question that lets them meet the curriculum goals. So here's what they have to do. They have to analyze the real estate to figure out where they're going to put their restaurant. They have to give their cafe a name, and they have to figure out what kind of cafe it's going to be, right? Is it a sushi bar? Is it a Moroccan cafe? Is it who knows what? They have to design the space, they have to create the menu and design the menu. They have to develop a nutritional analysis of the menu. Is it a restaurant selling junk food, like McDonald's? Is it a 5-star restaurant? Right? Veggies? Is it a vegetarian restaurant? Who knows, right? But they have to analyze the nutrition. They have to set the prices, and of course they have to work in euros, because that's what they use in Paris. They have to correlate the location with the market's demographics and with the menu. One group that I observed decided to do a sushi bar. So where in all of Paris is the best spot to make a sushi bar? They analyzed the cultural institutions in the city, and they finally found the Japanese Museum. And they located it right next to the Japanese Museum. Figured, hey, why not, right? It'd be a good correlator. If you were doing a Moroccan restaurant, you probably wouldn't put it next to the Japanese Museum, right? If you were doing a restaurant that was selling food aimed at lower middle income people, it would go in a different spot than if you were going to have one that was 5-star dining. So they had to know the map of the city. They have to know the subway system. They have to know how people can get there. So they correlate all this stuff. They speak French while doing this. They have to speak French because they have to talk to the realtors. They have to read the French newspapers to figure out where the opportunities are. They have to email the realtors and tell them what they're doing and have them help them find the places. I know a woman who's in college now who did this 5 years ago, and she's still getting emails from realtors offering her real estate spaces, right? They literally have to find the building. They have to get the floor plans of the building. They have to design the restaurant plan. Right? So they're doing hands-on work. She says, this woman who's in college now, she had never spoken this much French or written this much French ever before. So this project really ratcheted up the French. If you were doing a cafe in Boston, your students would be speaking English by email, etc. every day. So they bring in outside experts. She happens to have found a man who ran a restaurant in Paris. So he's living in Boston. He comes over to school every couple of weeks and helps them out. They also have architects and interior designers working with the students. Opportunity for you. Yeah. They now have it set up so that the students in Arlington are talking to students in Paris and communicating by email. And they're learning that the students in Paris use slang expressions that they've never heard of before. So they're dialing down into the culture. They have to locate and do location mapping. They're responsible for developing a spreadsheet for the annual operations of their restaurants. So they have to figure out how much it costs to hire people. They have to create advertisements to put in the French newspapers as if they were going to hire people. They do the menu graphics. They have to create a model of their design. And at the end of the year, they present to a jury. And I was on one of those juries. So outside experts come and review their work. So, what's this look like? A lot of this work is done on computers. So here's photos of the different places that they work. And at the end of the year, they present in a presentation space. Here's a jury. Here's 2 students, 2 and 3, presenting their model, a take-apart model showing all the pieces of the restaurant. Here is one of the menus. This was the sushi bar. Oh yeah, they all had to make the food they have in the restaurant for the jurors. So it's a good deal for jurors. Right? There, they had to do the graphics. They had to do a menu in English and a menu in French. Do all the translations. And here's the composite again. So, with all this, is this French class?
Yes.
Are they doing business?
Yes.
Are they doing geography?
Yes.
Are they doing graphics?
Yes.
Are they doing design?
Yes.
Are they doing computers? Right? They're doing all this stuff and it's all mushed together. And nobody's saying, hey, you're just doing one of these now or you're just doing another one later. So this is integration. It's easier to integrate out of school, which is why it's an after-school project. Because their school, like your school, is separate with teachers teaching different things. So how you can integrate this more into the daily life of students and teachers is to be figured out. But I present this to you as a model of project-based learning that pulls together a lot of the issues that I was talking about earlier today. Questions on this one?
I think I can say that we are working on some of them.
Yeah.
I don't like to talk with the microphone.
Sí, pero espera que ella.
I think we're working on that. We already started like 2 years ago. It's a slow process of integrating areas, but with the entrepreneur projects that the school is working on. In English, we work with, and still learning the someone. As I said, we're just beginning, but I think we're on the right track.
Okay.
And in Spanish, also they work that here in the school, in the projects. Math too. So
Okay.
we're doing like good work on that. We're just, like a pilot program, but it's working. I think we have a vision on that too. And with your help, we're going to organize that a little bit more. Thank you.
And that's the way this works. You start with something, and you grow it, and you develop it, and you add in more components as you go along.
Yeah.
And you may start with one teacher, and then you go to 2 and 3, and you figure out the ways to trial it out and make it successful, and then go.
You know what I think? I think we need a little bit more, again I will mention about the time of the teachers to organize and plan this type of works.
Yeah.
Because it's something mandatory, something that we need to have more spaces to work with. Planning and organizing ideas and all that.
Okay.
Thank
Good.
you.
Very good. Okay. You want to come up?
Sure.
Okay, so we had this short conversation during the break,
Yeah.
and you said there may be a resource here in the city that could help.
Yeah.
You need a microphone.
I'm gonna go ahead and speak in Spanish because
Yeah.
I already told you about it.
Okay,
so
use the mic if you could.
yes. Okay.
I don't know why.
Bueno, les quería comentar que pues acá en Colombia hay una propuesta muy buena de educación que se llama la Escuela Nueva, que la dirige Vicky Colbert, que es una exministra de Educación, y tiene muchos de estos conceptos. Entonces pues sería muy interesante que pues pudieran, digamos, verlo y cómo en realidad se puede aplicar, porque sí es muy aplicable todo lo que Mr. Frank está diciendo. Era solo eso.
Good, thank you. Okay. So this is the way we think of school. So this is a classroom, and this is a corridor, and you may have your classrooms separated from each other, but this is pretty much the model. So this would be a small school, and in our traditional way of thinking, if this is a small school, but we need a bigger school, we just do this. Right? We just make more classrooms until we run out of kids, and that's the end of school. This assumes that the teacher's in here, the teacher here has nothing to do with the teacher here, right? And that a student in this room doesn't know anything about what's going on in the room next door, because we've taken our curriculum and our day and we've broken it up into little tiny pieces. And that was the industrial model, which was really based on taking work and breaking it into little components. But now, so this is 20th century schools. Now we're looking for different things. We're looking for integrating the curriculum. We're looking for collaborative teachers. And we're looking to create relationships. So an abstract concept of what a 21st century school might look like is this. We still have circulation, the corridors, but we try to make them shorter and wider so that they're usable for learning. Instead of just walking, they're usable for learning. And if you have outdoor spaces for your corridors, and I haven't been through your whole campus yet, if you have outdoor spaces, you figure out how you can use those for learning. We then have spaces that might be different sizes with different kinds of furniture. And some of them might be administrative spaces. And some of them might be small group rooms. And some of them might not even be rectangular. They might be funny shapes. And they might go outside. We may need to get out of the school for something. And if we have a small school, it might look like this. And if we have a bigger school, it might look like this. Because there's a magic about how many people are in one of these groupings. And that magic might be 150 people. Might be 200. But it's not the whole school. And sometimes we need to squeeze these together, and other times we need to learn outside the school. Because learning out in the community is more effective for students than learning inside of the school building. So starting with furniture. So here's a student. What you guess? He's like 10 or 11? Yeah? Is 10? You think so? Okay. So what's he doing? He's sitting backwards on a chair. Would he get yelled at this school? At your school? Yeah. Would you tell him? What would you tell him? Are they right? That's what you would tell him too? Okay. Well, guess what? He is sitting properly. Huh? He's sitting in a chair that is designed to be sat in either frontwards or backwards. And it's a chair that is designed to have a slightly wiggly back. Right? So if he's sitting backwards on it, he can rock a little bit. And what we know, what brain research tells us, is that if you don't move, your brain goes to sleep. And what they say is adults can sit for an hour without moving, and you did really well this morning. Adults can sit for an hour. Secondary school students can sit for a half hour before their brain goes to sleep. And elementary school students can sit for 15 minutes. Does that sound right? Yep. Okay. And so our normal furniture, this is a classic American what we call a tablet armchair. It's designed for only one method of learning, taking notes. It's got a hard plastic seat. Or wood? You have these? Do you have these? Okay. It lasts forever. And it hurts after 45 minutes. Right? So, here is furniture that's designed to support the brain, and here is furniture that's designed to be against education. Oh, by the way, do you have these here?
Yes. Everyone.
Okay. Lots of them? Okay. So, table and chairs, separate, okay. It's almost impossible. It's almost impossible to collaborate with these. Almost impossible to collaborate, yeah. And in fact, these were designed when students working together was cheating. And they're designed to keep students apart. And now we're trying to get students together. So here's students working together. I particularly like this one. A stand-up desk with computer technology that allows students to work together in a small group. So you might in fact want a classroom that's just full of these. Or has these along the edges of the room, because part of the time students are going to be working with these. A further step is a group activity table where students could be making things, making a model, making a diorama. Here they're working with a kit of parts. Or furniture that lets you group it for longer term collaborations or for individual reflection. These, by the way, all come from the same furniture company.
Yes, they have. Standardized.
You might want furniture that has students standing up. And this is a desk that has a place to put your leg. And you can move your leg. So it's a little treadle. And you can wiggle while you're working. Wiggle while you work? Yeah. And what research shows is behavior problems go down when kids are working in stand-up desks. I mean, you can go to Google and research it. I mean, there's lots of stuff out there. And so this kind of lets kids behave in manners that their bodies are telling them to behave in without disrupting others. Now, here is a concept of classroom space that has in it some of the things we just saw, like a collaboration table. This one's electronic. It has in it a space for students to do video presentations. Remember, oral communication was one of the most important things for students to be learning because it's important in the rest of their lives. And if we have, do you have these at your school for students to use? No? You have one? Okay. You will have one soon? Coming soon? Okay. All right. That's a start. Okay. That's a start. I mean, what if the student's job, what if the student assignment at 6th grade was to create something to put on YouTube? They would love it. Yeah. What if it was the same assignment? What if you took a group of students and said, here's the assignment, we want you to write a paper on it. You know, just sit down and write a paper. We want you to make something to go on YouTube. Huh?
YouTube.
Interesting, yes.
It would be interesting to see what the responses were and to see if we could determine there's more learning when they're highly engaged with something that's very, very challenging and effective, using new media. So if you don't have some cameras, and of course everybody, if you, do you let students use their mobile phones in school? Sometimes, okay. Well, every mobile phone has
Like
a...
when they need to use the, find a word in the dictionary.
Yeah, okay, for limited use, and maybe video use. Coming soon. Coming soon.
Nobody's true.
Okay.
Yes, you have to use it a lot.
Yes. There's lots of uses for mobile phones that we generally don't let kids do.
Well,
And that's our problem, not theirs.
we have to supervise them.
Yes, we do. Yep, I know.
But
I
in
know.
all the
It's
places
new
of the world, they
management.
have.
But how about this? How about a set of bleachers on wheels that you can push against the wall when you don't need them, and you can pull them out and have student presentations. They don't take up much room. They're much more interesting than chairs. So there's a possibility with furniture. Moving on. Here's a classroom designed with a variety of pieces of furniture, tables that you put together in modules. These are little wiggly seats that look like mushrooms and are balanced so they don't fall over. Here's the beanbag chairs. And here is what used to be the teacher's desk, but is now a group discussion table. So, you know, if the teacher needs a desk in a room for personal and professional tools, turn it into something that students can use as well. Two pictures of the same thing. Carrying these thoughts through. This was the winner of a national competition in the United States for, it was for a 5th grade classroom, 5th grade exploration studio. And the design shows 2 classrooms, 1, 2. And each classroom has in it spaces along the edge for students to work in groups, a zone in the middle for much bigger, broader learning, countertops with sinks, you can see them right here in the picture, countertops with sinks like you might have in a science lab, but you need for art and science and anything that you're going to be making a mess with. A wall that folds away and opens into a zone that's shared with another room. And of course this would need to be translated to meet your own particular situation. Presentation zone in the middle. A kitchen. Well, you need drinks while you're working, right? An outdoor space that mirrors the indoor space with a zone, with tile, and again, some more countertops. An area to sit in a circle and talk, read stories, and a place to grow crops. Basically, every classroom needs a place to grow crops. So, by the way, the wall folds back, and all of this can work as one if the 2 teachers are really going to collaborate. What's that? Oh, question. Microphone.
Okay.
About we were talking, you were talking earlier about the use of iPods and stuff in class. I was wondering, what do you think about the use of music while they're working by themselves? Do you think it's inappropriate, or is it okay? Because they say they concentrate better when they're listening to music by themselves.
Yeah. When my daughter was in high school, and she wanted to do her work lying on the carpet on the floor with her books all spread out and the music playing. And every day I would say to her, no, sit at a chair, sit at a table. And she either begrudgingly moved or fought me on it. I regret those times. Because I think she probably knew what her mind and body needed. And the real question probably is, what music is it? You know, is it supported, etc. And that's not to say that the adult really knows the answer to that, but it is to say that the parent or the teacher should know what the kid is listening to. I think it's part of what I call learning modalities. We know that different people learn in different ways. Some people need to have quiet, reflective, no distractions. Other people would love to do their learning sitting in the middle of 300 people with lots of noise going on. And who are we to say what's best for them? But I think what we need to do is to have continuing discussions with the students so that they can discover their own best learning modalities. And we tend not to do that. We tend to say, this is how you should study. It's part of those learning skills that the 21st century skills concept asks us to do. So let me just show you this really quickly. This is a project in Michigan that is a high-achieving high school. And we did visioning. This is what they have right now. This is pretty traditional American stuff. This is where they wanted to go. They wanted to open up spaces. They wanted to have spots that didn't look like classrooms, that students could dissect thoughts on their computers, could have impromptu discussions, could have different group sizes. This is what they're building right now, because they realized they didn't have the professional staff development for teachers to know what to do with this. So this has more regular classrooms, but they're bigger. Because they're about 20% bigger. It has a zone that has shared spaces to know what that is. Teachers can have their students work. So this has more regular classrooms. It has a small group room. They're about 20%. It has some impromptu areas. It has a zone that attempts to use the corridor for learning. Teachers can have their students working in. It has a small group room because they know that it has some impromptu areas, and it attempts to use the corridor for learning to get more use out of it. But they're smart because they know that if they succeed at this, they're going to want to keep on going. And in 10 to 15 years, the technology is going to be much better. And so if they make the walls they're building removable, they can do this easily. So while we don't really know where education is going, or we don't exactly know where education is going, we know the direction that it's going in. And it's going towards much more personalization. It's going towards people working together. And so they are in the right direction. So we know that learning is a social activity. And how do we position our students and our teachers to take advantage of it? This is a school in California. And these are the corridors. These are the walkway spaces between the rooms. And when the students aren't in class, they're hanging around. But when they are in class, they can come out and use these for collaboration, for reflection, and other types of modalities that are more appropriate. There's a movement towards making learning visible, and this shows the idea of making trophies of learning more visible. This is a school in the east part of London, and every year they enter, this is a science math project, every year they enter the British competition of how far can a car go on a battery, can a car go based on one battery. So the competition organizers give each school a battery that's in a sealed box, and the student's job is to build a car and see how far they can go. So this is physics, this is math, this is art. I happen to think that's an incredibly artful design. Beautiful build, a beautiful car. And so when you walk around the school, you see these cars sitting everywhere. Because they're the trophies of last year's competition. And we need to think of our classrooms not as classrooms anymore, but as studios, where students are doing more active learning, making things, perhaps learning in different modalities. There you go. Is this kid learning or not?
Yes.
Huh? He's on the floor. Could that be learning?
Yes.
Yeah?
Can I answer something?
Well, yes.
Which one could be the best number for our students in one class like that one? 20, 25, 50.
How many students in each one of these?
Yes. You consider
Well-
more than?
It looks like a lot.
Yeah, plenty.
Yeah.
But a good number in projects or working like in a classroom like that one. I think that one is too big. But they're like high school students.
These are high school students. In California, it's not unusual to have 30 students and with a teacher. So you have to manage that. Most teachers would prefer less. You at 25 are probably in
A good number.
pretty good shape. In America, 25 is the more common number in most schools.
And also, as I can see on the pictures you're showing, there's a natural light,
Yes?
yes, which I think is great. Bigger spaces, very clear. The walls used to be done in windows,
Yes.
crystal.
Yep. I'll show you that even more. So how about this? All walls are glass. And they put posters on the wall, on the glass. And many teachers in America think that they should cover up all the windows to the next rooms because kids get distracted. Right? It always seemed to me that those teachers might be doing something that causes the students to be interested in something else. Right? So maybe the teachers need to change their delivery rather than simply block the windows. In this school, this is a renovation of an existing building, and it's got a lot of roof lights, it's got skylights. And they just simply made all the partitions out of glass from this height up. So that's solid, and then that's all glass. And it turns out that nobody cares if you're walking around. And I can walk around as a visitor, and nobody's paying attention because they're all used to it, and because the work is interesting. And so this is an extreme example of it, but we know it works.
Una pregunta. Las aulas que observé, en donde los estudiantes, las aulas que observé donde los estudiantes se relajan corporalmente, ellos tienen espacios en donde se pueden interactuar visualmente, o sea, no son espacios como los que usted descubrió de hace 50 años, donde uno está detrás del otro. En una experiencia que trabajamos en el colegio, cuando hacemos debates y trabajamos pensamiento crítico, argumentativo y contraargumentativo, he descubierto, pero sin que sea una investigación seria, que cuando los estudiantes tienen una postura relajada, en un espacio cómodo, que además hay contacto visual, el nivel es muchísimo más complejo en las argumentaciones y contraargumentaciones que cuando trabajo en el salón de clases formal, que un estudiante está detrás del otro. Mi pregunta puntual es, ¿ustedes tienen investigaciones en donde de verdad podamos afirmar que cuando los estudiantes en estos espacios podrían desarrollar mejor su pensamiento crítico?
It seems to me that your experience sounds right. That the rows of seats all facing in one direction limit student dialogue and limit debates. So I would agree with you. I don't know that you can find any explicit research on those classroom dynamics, but I know you could try them out here. You could do a research project with your students and have them reflect on different classroom spaces that we've got. And they will tell you which ones they think are most effective. And we tend to
Lo he
not
hecho
listen
y
to
ellos
students.
dicen que es más efectivo cuando están en posiciones de espacios relajados. Nosotros tenemos una media torta en donde tenemos espacios de media torta y espacios de contacto visual y ellos dicen sentirse mejor y ellos oralmente manifiestan que la complejidad mejora en los debates a cuando lo hago en el salón de clase donde están uno detrás del otro.
So you already know the answer. But you might need to record it better. Have you documented it? Do you have photos? Do you have testimonials from students? That would be a good student project to do. So put it on your list. Yeah. He's the man, he'll take care of it. Okay, let me show you a few more. What do we got here? Okay, I'm just skipping through these. Do you have a library here? Okay. This picks up on your question of rows, right? This is a school that we worked in about 4 years ago. And it's a typical middle class, upper middle class school, and the kids had a computer lab. And then they had a library. This is a middle school, so this is grades 6, 7, 8. And we took the end of the library and we made what we called an internet cafe. There's no food, but it's a good term. And in the middle of the internet cafe, we made an amoeba table. A funny shaped table with ins and outs. And then we loaded it up with desktop computers. And right next to it, in the next room, was a computer lab which had the same computers, and it was row upon row upon row of computers. And it meant that the teacher could stand at the back of the room and see all the screens, but it was kind of like prison. Well, right? All in a row, right? And we made the amoeba table, and here's students working on the amoeba table. And we put in a few other things that were really conducive to social learning. And we even changed the shape of the book stacks so that instead of row upon row of book stacks, we made some U-shaped ones, which had little spots in there to drop a beanbag chair and sit down and read. And so what happened is we made these changes, and the students petitioned the principal. Where's our principal? Who's going to tell her? They petitioned the principal to go back and change the other computer labs because they liked these. What the amoeba table lets you do is it lets you work with the person next to you
And discuss and talk.
and discuss and talk. So it's more of a collaboration table. So that's one thing that happened. The second thing that happened is that all of a sudden, twice as many books were being taken out of the library as before. We didn't change anything on the books other than making that adjustment to allow beanbags. But what we did is we created something that students wanted. They wanted a way to collaborate while working on their computers. So how do you figure this out, you know? This is social emotional learning. And this is students basically voting. There's the plan. There's the data table. And then here's the book stacks. We also made these little booth-like tables as well. Oh, and we made booths for kids to sit in. This is like, do your McDonald's have booths for kids? Kids love them. So, let me jump over this. Presentation spaces for oral presentations. This doesn't take up very much room, but it gives opportunity for display and it honors students making presentations in a way that's more elevated than standing in the back of a classroom. In England, there was a national program called Spaces for Personalized Learning. And this was one of their pilot studies. This is in an elementary school with probably 600 students on the southwest part of London. And for the pilot project, they took an old multi-purpose room, which was about, I'd say it was about 10 meters by 20 meters. And right along the edge of it, they put some booths. They created a presentation area. They put a sink in and they made a science and work area, wet area. And they put some lounge furniture in over here to create a discussion area. And what that looks like is a row of booths for kids to sit in. You could have 4 kids in here working together on something. You could have 1 kid sitting in there taking a test over again. You could have a parent and a teacher in there talking quietly about what their kid needs. They made a space for presentations. It's this circle on the floor. You can just see the science area in the corner. And so when I was there, and they have beanbag chairs that they store overhead, and they put them on the floor when they need them. So this was an adaptation of an old space that didn't have very much definition. And when I was there, the teachers were debating. The big question for the teachers was, what of this can we put in our classrooms? Because what the problem here was that this was a go-to space. It was, you sign up for it and you go to it. They wanted it more often. What if you put some booths like this in every classroom? What if some students really like to learn in a booth rather than learning in a regular chair? So an interesting debate. What do we have to share and what can we have with our kids all the time? Somebody asked the question about music in classrooms. This is a little story of schools in Finland. In Helsinki, basically, I went to about 10 primary schools in Helsinki a couple of years ago, and invariably they were organized as small learning communities with like 3 or 4 or 5 classrooms together and a common space. And often, so that they were so particularized that you could just walk right outside to get to the playground, even if you were on the 2nd floor. And what those looked like in the small learning community is each one had a commons area, which looked rather like a living room. So students could be studying out in the commons area. Each one had a teacher center for teachers to work together. And each classroom had a piano in it. So they could do music while they're doing their core learning. Every one of these had a piano in it. That's a pretty serious statement about music and core learning. So, I share this one because you are founded with Jesuits, right? This is a school in Minneapolis, but there are many of these in the United States. This is a school that has groupings of 150 kids, 150 students on a floor. And it has classrooms along the edge. You see these rooms here? Yeah? In the blue here and the red over here. Each classroom has a glass wall opening up to a corridor, this walkway space. But the key to this is the walkway space is more than a walkway. This is it. It's really wide. And it's a space that allows group discussions of students. It allows students working together in stand-up areas. Because of the doors, you can lift up the door. This is a glass wall, but it's a door, a garage door. You lift it up. And so you can have the classroom flow right out into this. And so either the teacher can keep the door closed and the sound stays in the classroom, but because it's glass, the teacher can see students working in the next spaces, or you can open the door and everything flows out. And sometimes you might want one, and other times you might want another one. So it's very much a statement that a classroom needs to be flexible to support different types of learning. Different noise levels, etc. This is also a school where the students are only in the building 4 days a week. The 5th day they go to a business and they work in the business. And 4 students share a job. And they earn money by doing that, and the money goes to the school as tuition. So by having 4 students share a job, let's say that you went there on Monday to work at the job, you went there on Tuesday, you went there on Wednesday, you went there on Thursday. You know you have to talk to each other about the work you're doing in the business, because you're all performing one job. And that contributes to student collaboration and taking adult responsibilities. And the reason they do that is that they know the kind of learning that the students are doing in the businesses is learning that they could never learn in school. So there are limitations to what you can learn in school. Let me jump on here. I'm going to show you 3 more. Remember earlier I was talking to you about making things? And that guy who ran the motorcycle repair shop?
Yes.
This is a story about a school outside of Portland, Oregon. It's a high school. And they traditionally had a wood shop and a metal shop. Just standard shop equipment, and you learn to make birdhouses and things like that. The projects weren't very meaningful, and the students didn't want to sign up, so they were not signing up. About 10 years ago, the school rethought how to do this kind of learning. And they invented the Applied Technology Center. And in the Applied Technology Center, they have 3 learning themes. One learning theme is bioagricultural. Another one is engineering. And another one is communications. What they created were 3 different focus areas where students do real work, serving the community, so that it's just not isolated within the school, but they're doing something that helps the community at large. If this was applied here, you could either do it in your local neighborhoods, or you could do it with your parent community. In the bioag section, bioagricultural, which is basically a science lab and a greenhouse and a grow room and a tissue culture room. They have a retired professor from the local university come out and work with the students, and their job is to develop better seeds for the local farmers to use. Their job is to improve the crops of the businesses, the farming businesses in the area. And in order to do that, they have to experiment. They have to use critical thinking skills to figure out how to splice genes or whatever they do to make seeds. I don't know how you make seeds. They have to talk to the farmers. They have to find out what last year's crop, how last year's crop was. They have to stand up in public and do adult work. In the engineering section, they make things for the community. When I was there, they were making a bridge to go over a creek that was on the edge of their campus. And in order to make that bridge, they had to work with the public officials who have to approve designs like this. They had to set up a small business to make the bridge. They had to manage money, and they had to manage time, student time, to make it. They also, by the way, developed designs and then they crushed them to see which ones were the strongest ones. They made models and they crushed the models. And in the communications, they have the regular job of recording the school board meetings and putting them on the internet and on the cable TV. So what they're doing is service learning. They're doing integrated project learning. They, by the way, have a teacher center in this zone. And the teacher center includes a math teacher, and a science teacher, and an English teacher. Here would be a Spanish teacher, who work with this hands-on learning in developing learning in an integrated way. And what they found out is since they set this up, they went from having some courses that no students wanted to sign up for. Now they have a waiting list of as many kids wanting to get into this program as they have spaces for. Kids want this stuff. It's meaningful, it's adult work, and it makes a great portfolio. So let me share with you 2 examples that are number 24. The end of the classroom as we know it today. All right? So does all this type of learning fit into a classroom? Yeah, maybe, maybe not. What is a classroom anyway? We tend to think of a classroom as 4 walls, and a door, and an outside window, and a bunch of furniture. And we tend to think of that furniture as the same no matter whose classroom it is, right? So it'll be age dependent, little seats for little kids and bigger seats for big kids, but everybody gets the same kind of furniture because we want equity and we want fairness for all teachers. Is that about what it is here? Okay.
That is cool. Because here at the school, we have a different structure and furniture.
For which school?
Preschool.
Preschool. Yeah, okay, that's fair. Yeah. I don't know your preschool, but in most, I will see it, yes. Most preschools are great models for all of K-12 because they have activity zones. That's my quick response.
It has tables and different chairs and colored chairs.
Yes, and subgroups within the room? Yeah, okay. Well, so let me tell you 2 examples of schools that contrast that assumption about what classrooms are. This is a school in Australia, and it's in Melbourne. It's in a poor part of the town, and I'd say over half the students who go to school here are immigrants from other countries. And they come from largely Indonesia and the Middle East, 2 parts of the world that we don't think of as being very innovative on education. About 15 years ago, a group of teachers and their school principal led a research project with students to figure out how to best teach and learn. And they modeled a lot of their work on Reggio Emilia, which is in Italy. People shaking their heads up and down, you know Reggio Emilia?
Yes.
So it's, what's that?
No, we have a lot of people talking about that program.
Okay. So they said, Reggio Emilia, that tends to be early learning. What do we do for 5th and 6th graders? Students were on the team to invent this idea. They created a concept where they were serving groups of kids in 2 years, not 1, about 110 kids working with teams of teachers, so like 5 or 6 teachers. They created out of their original building, which looked like this, regular classrooms separated from each other, they cut some holes in the walls. And they made interrelated rooms, a suite of rooms. And then in each room they put different kinds of furniture. They created a theater room, which has in it a video projector, a TV camera. It has a recording studio in it. And various tools and lighting, etc., that allows students to do work of learning by acting, etc. They created a studio, which was kind of like an art lab. They created a study room. They have the direct teaching room with tablet armchairs. And then they have a double-sized room that has a lounge in it, and a platform that's for laying things out on the floor. And it has seminar-type tables and some computers for kids. It also has, right there in the middle, can you read it? Snacks. A little food bar for students. Right? You gotta have that, right? So how many classroom groupings for 5th graders and 6th graders do you know that have a recording studio in them? 0, right?
0.
How many do you know that have a snack bar? 0, right? Okay. Now, you might say those are not necessary, but I would say these are, if you think of furniture as a tool, and if you think that you should always have the best tool for the work you're doing, this basically just says, if teachers collaborate and share a whole group of spaces, and students work in teams, and then they move from space to space depending upon what they're doing in their learning, you can have much richer tools for your students to work with. And a student might be using this for 2 hours in a day and then move over here. It just has to be coordinated. And so it expects that the scheduling is done by the teachers in the spaces rather than by somebody in the summertime at the beginning of the year. So here is what that studio space looks like. Here is what the direct teaching room looks like. Here's a small area of soft seating for students to work together. Here's that lounge space. And it looks to me as though this could be a great space for a group debate, small group discussion. Here's that layout platform space, spread out. So what's happened is they've done this, and the test scores have gone way up. And these immigrant parents are fighting to get into the school. They now have 400 students, and they used to have 250. So there's a testimony through choice of parents about how effective this is. They have this for the early years, for the primary years. It just doesn't show. It's not so photogenic, but it's the same thing. Group working activity. So somebody said that your preschool, who said that? Your preschool is activity centers, right? Like, and Reggio Emilia would have activity centers. Isn't this just a big version of preschool with activity centers? There are different rooms instead of one room, but that's the only difference.
Exactly, it's what I was going to say. Those are centers.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is doable. Question over here? Deborah? Not working.
Hola.
Gracias. Tengo una inquietud. En toda esta nueva estructura que usted plantea a nivel de instalaciones, obviamente detrás hay una nueva estructura a nivel del colegio. La figura del director de grupo a nivel de la primaria que tenemos por lo menos aquí en América es un profesor que responde por los niños y que da el informe a los padres. ¿Esta figura todavía se emplearía en esta nueva estructura o son los directores de área o los de proyecto los que van a estar con estos niños permanentemente?
Okay, good questions. So, as I understand it, the question was, you have a homeroom concept that students check in with their teachers at the beginning of the day.
Homeroom teacher.
Homeroom teacher, yes, right. And it's hard to find homeroom in this.
She's asking, excuse me, can I have a microphone? She's asking if in that new concept, a homeroom teacher is going to disappear, or is going to be more important in the classroom with the students with that type of program?
I don't know the answer to that. But I do know the phone number of the principal. And I've interviewed him several times. So any questions like that are important and would be needed to answer to solve the question of do we go here, I'll be glad to share that number and any resources I have to help your discussions here. It doesn't look like you could easily do homeroom in some of these spaces. So that's the best answer I can give you. There's a question back here. Question back here.
Buenos días a todos. Me parece supremamente interesante toda la propuesta que hace a nivel estructural para una institución. No obstante, pues la realidad actual no nos permite visualizar de manera inmediata pues ejecutar este tipo de proyectos. En vista de eso, mi pregunta es la siguiente. Nosotros, como teniendo en cuenta la estructura que tenemos ahora y buscando llegar a otro tipo de enseñanza más amplia, unificada y colaborativa, yo me pregunto por qué condiciones básicas en cuanto a habilidades, sobre todo, deben tener los docentes y los estudiantes para prepararse frente a eso. Porque usted ha presentado que se cambió y todo pareciera que mágicamente se da. Yo no creo que no es así. Creo que nosotros necesitamos prepararnos mental y estructuralmente, mentalmente, para poder asumir ese reto. Entonces, básicamente entonces la pregunta es, ¿cuáles son las condiciones o habilidades más bien que deben tener los docentes y los estudiantes para luego asumir este tipo de educación colaborativa?
Good comments. To go from here to there, you need a process. The process needs to include creating a clear long-term vision of how you really want it to be. I've thrown a lot of things at you. I've shared lots of things, but I don't know whether you want these or not. And I expect that in fact you will invent some new things that are just particular for here. You, because of your history, because of what you're already doing, we know you're already doing some bits and pieces of this, and you have to make your own statement of who you are. That takes some time. It takes perhaps more effort than you're used to for group collaboration and decision making. But I would bet within 6 months, if you really said this next coming year, this academic year, we want to develop a strong concept of our future, there is time to do that. That's one part of the puzzle. What comes out of that is a strategic plan of how you do your step-by-step of making this work. You could just go and change all your facilities right away, and it's not going to work because you have to have your teaching part. You have to change that, and it will not. We can't change it all at once. So you have to pick the spots that you're going to make some changes. Maybe we start the cafe in Boston in 5th grade. And maybe we do it in 11th grade at the same time. Yeah, you have to go to Boston. And so that would be a place to start. And maybe we do something else somewhere else, and we have this arranged on a time schedule, so we know how they fold together over time. And tied in with that, maybe we can buy some new furniture and try it out, and buy some different ones to see which ones you really think work. Technology. Maybe we need mobile phones and tablets. And we need to experiment with one room versus another room. And we need to see how the learning changes. So it's a long-term, maybe it's a 5-year plan that has steps coordinated with each other and the cooperative effort of all of the teachers and the belief that this is what we want to be. So that's I think, the next steps. And I'll be glad to help you however I can. Tomorrow, I do have a planning day with your architect designer to talk about what some of this might be if, in fact, the school wants to do it. So my day of planning is speculative with him, but it is the next step, or a next step, to try to bring some of this as a possibility. And I do know, let me go back. Let me, hang on here, let me go back to, where it goes. I know this furniture company really well, and I know they would be eager to loan you some furniture to try it out. And you gotta start somewhere. So all these pieces, fit them together, and go step by step according to an agreed upon plan. Sound okay? Okay, let me show you just one more slide, and then we'll get out to lunch. Coming right up. Okay, here it is. This is a secondary school that's just been built in Michigan. It is a school, it's a wing of a school that is designed for project learning. So if you think about your students who are going to be doing a cafe in Boston, what do they need? Do they need a place to lay out and make models? Do they need a place to talk with each other, a team of 4 students working with each other? Do they need feedback that they can share through a screen on the wall? You know, how does the work on their iPad or iPhone be shared with other students? So they need a setting that allows them to do that. They need a place to make things and lay stuff out. They maybe need a softer space with some food, right? Or they may need a zone to camp out in for a long period of time. The project in Paris lasted a whole year. It lasted a whole year. Let's say yours lasts a whole year, a school year. Yeah. So where do they work on it? Maybe they have an assigned room to work on. So this school, this building, has, in these 4 photos, shows you a highly evolved place for learning where the teacher goes to all of these rooms to work with the students. It's not that the students come to the teacher's room, it's that the teacher goes to the learning spaces. And this, in my mind, is pretty much like this, only more highly evolved, with higher technology. And it may be that this is what the long-term concept of school building is like. More activity-focused, more student-focused, less teacher-centric, where different groups of students are doing different things at the same time. And whether it's right for you is for you to figure out. What's that?
Walking teachers.
Yes, yes. We have a concept in America in business called management by wandering around.
Yes.
And this would be teaching by wandering around. Yeah, that's it. So let's go get some lunch, huh?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you be sure that you turn in your worksheet and you have your name on it? Got name on it? How about if I stand, Gabrielle?